Okay, I'm just gonna start now. Hey everyone, welcome to the #1 podcast for everything iPhone and iPad. This is the iMore Show.
It's August 22, 2012, and I'm your host, Rene Ritchie, and I run a little website called iMore. We're here live every Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, and while you may be listening to us on iTunes or YouTube, if you have not yet joined us live, then you have not seen Shakespeare the way it was meant to be done. Am I right, Georgia?
You are absolutely right. This will be Shakespeare in motion, wearing a clown suit. It's us.
Now, Georgia is, of course, a senior editor here at Mobile Nation. She is also the co-host of Zen and Tech. How are you, Georgia?
I am completely and utterly burnt. But besides that...
Now, when you say burnt, I mean, I don't want to scare our audio listeners. You mean in a mental and or emotional sense, not a physical sense, right?
I can't tell you.
Like, well, no one has set you on fire.
You have to come and watch the show, and then you'll know.
Also joining us tonight is the CIO of Nickelfish and the co-host of Iterate, and the man who spent 4 days pounding on the door of app.net saying, let me in, at Seth Clifford. Is it safe to call you at Seth Clifford yet?
Yeah, it's official. I'm finally in after I got my invite. Yeah.
You've been apped?
Yeah, no, I got some help from those guys today. They reached out and they were awesome. So I'm officially in the alpha, finally. Got my invite Friday. Couldn't play with all the other nerds over the weekend, and I'm in now.
So with Mobile Nations now, we officially doubled the population of app.net?
It's possible, yeah. Yeah.
Nice. What do you think of it so far? I'll veer off topic for a second. App.net, for those of you who haven't heard of it, is an attempt to recreate Twitter in a less dickish environment. So they ask for $50 up front for a user, $100 for a developer, but there'll be no ads, there'll be no API limits, there'll be no catering to the Lady Gagas. Everyone will be co-equal.
I think it's cool. I mean, I wrote a little something about it, and basically, I kind of struggled with whether or not I was going to get behind it, and I finally ended up doing it because I just felt it was time to stop just complaining and actually try to, even in a small way, make something else happen, even though I'm not making anything happen except $50 going from one place to another. But I really like the philosophy behind it. It's not going to solve all the problems that Twitter has. It's going to solve this problem of Twitter being jerks. So... you know, it's not sensible to pin all your hopes on it, but honestly, it's been a while since there's been even any real movement in the social network space that's been notable, and it's exciting. You know, it's kind of a new thing, and it's growing, and there's a lot of momentum seemingly behind it, and I'm really curious to see. Yes, nerdmentum. But as a nerd, I'm really looking forward to seeing what people do with it, and I'm not going to abandon Twitter, but I think that it could prove to be a very useful second tool for, you know, specific purposes.
And Georgia, since you barely use Twitter, I'm assuming you rushed to give them $50 instead of spending it on cotton candy and assorted popcorns?
That and my Scottishness may keep me away all on its own.
Well, here's the thing. So give me your opinion on this, Georgia. Twitter is a central authority that can do what they want. They can say, okay, even though you made apps previously, you may no longer make apps because we want to sell advertising to, you know, big business in Hollywood, you pathetic little developers. But app.net says they won't do that, but they're still a centralized authority. You know, instead of Russia, there's Singapore, or instead of like, I don't know, Stalinistic Russia, there's Singapore, a benevolent dictatorship. And some people think that it should be free and open like email, where there's no one person that controls the real-time web.
You know, I don't really trust anything being controlled by one body, so though I'm happy that they're there, I don't know, we'll have to see if they choose to use and or misuse it.
No one's going to be caned, I hope. Was that wrong? Is that culturally insensitive of me?
In comparison to when you do your
Scottish imitation,
or others, I think you'll
or
be okay
any
this
accent
time.
for that.
Scotchtoberfest, you used me, Skinner.
How dare you make fun of the Scottish people? I am so insulted.
Yeah, with a name like Richie, how dare I make fun of the Scottish people? Richie is a sept of the Clan Macintosh, by the way. Aren't we all richer for knowing that?
I know I am.
So on to more serious topics. Georgia, it finally happened. We finally got the iMore Forums app launched. May I show it to you?
Please.
This is, well, I'll show you the post where we announced it, but it's actually live. It's a white label version of Tapatalk, and basically Tapatalk is a well-known forum browsing engine on iOS. We decided to give it away for free, but and specify that it connects to the iMore forums. So you don't have to worry about finding them, doing anything else. Download the app. It's free. You press a button. You log in with the same login you used to leave comments or posts on iMore today, and you were just there. You were just in the forums. You're getting your wallpapers, your ringtones. You're asking for help. You're helping other people. It's just all done right for you there.
Perfect. People have been really waiting for this, so a lot of people are really excited. Love the interface too.
It's a good interface. I'm going to ask Seth though. Seth, we did not incorporate it into the iMore app, which you nickel fishies put together for us so wonderfully. And some people have been asking about that. Would you mind spending just a minute telling people why we didn't do that?
Yeah, sure. The short version is that the Tapatalk engine that drives that app, that they allow people to license and white label for their own branding and purposes like that, it couldn't be easily dropped into kind of a sub-layer of the existing iMore app. So what we had wanted to do was nest it inside a tab, and the entire architecture of what they provide could not be nested a level deeper than it was. It couldn't be abstracted that way. It kind of needs to sit at that top level the way that it's built. So we did a lot of research and a lot of thinking about it, and it proved to be, not really feasible for the time frame in which we wanted to launch and the kind of stuff that we wanted to do with the app and the cleanliness of navigation and, the traditional kind of ease of use that we were shooting for. So we decided to leave it out. And, one of the things we had talked about was possibly having it split out as a separate app or, integrating later. But I think you guys made the right choice because I think it's a good standalone app on its own, and I think it probably works a lot better.
Georgia, this one is clearly in your wheelhouse. Steve Jobs' stolen iPad. If you remember, we had breaking news last week. Steve Jobs' house was robbed. It wasn't an intent. They didn't target Steve Jobs, but his house was robbed. And it turns out that his iPad was recovered from Kenny the Clown.
Oh, me and clowns. That's just the funniest thing and creepy at the same time.
Can I suggest that the police were tracking it? They drove up. They saw Kenny the Clown. They're like, just keep driving. And is that basically what happened?
Hilarious. Should have left a whole bunch of clown pictures on the iPad. That's it.
Who do you love? Kenny the Clown.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Who is Kenny the Clown? Is this like a clown I should know? Is he like a local person?
Is he like Bozo is what you're saying?
Like, am I just completely out of the loop, or is this like a local California thing that I wouldn't know, kind of like Carl's Jr. or something?
Everyone knows Kenny the Clown.
I don't know Kenny the Clown.
I really don't.
But he had Steve Jobs' iPad, and it turned out his friend was the one who stole it and then gave it to him. And then, either the police or the goddamn Batman tracked him down and recovered it.
Well, he has gotten a lot more Twitter followers after this has happened. Interestingly enough, he's now a huge hit. People are totally going for.
That's just
Kenny
wrong. You should not profit from crime. He should have to turn his Twitter followers into the victims.
Did he actually steal it, or did he buy a stolen iPad?
He accepted stolen property.
Yeah, but he didn't know that it was stolen, right?
Well, I didn't know it was stolen. I'm a clown.
He didn't know.
It's worked out pretty well for Gizmodo once. I figured he'd roll the dice, right?
Oh, you went there. Just as Sam showed up in the chat room to egg you on.
Yeah.
No, this story could not get stranger. I mean, how do you chance upon Steve Jobs' iPad and give it to a clown? I mean, if Aaron Sorkin were writing a script to the biography of Steve Jobs' life, a vignette could not be painted rosier than this.
Well, I keep on thinking, though, when I think clown, I'm not just thinking just any regular clown. I'm thinking of either like It or the clown from Zombieland. I'm thinking of someone that I wouldn't want the iPad back at the end.
You think there's a clown out there killing people with Steve Jobs' iPad? Come here, little boy.
Or at least using it to take photos of it after.
Don't blame me. I didn't do it. All right. moving.
Who do you love?
Yeah, before we just lapse
What would you do
into
if I was
Krusty.
canceled? Sorry, Seth?
I said before we just completely lapse into Krusty, we should move on.
All right, yeah, we should. Why an LTE iPhone will mean the most for Verizon? I don't know if you remember, Seth, but almost 2 years ago, I wrote an article about how if AT&T wanted to be incredibly unscrupulous, they could, invent a 4G iPhone because they were calling HSPA 4G, and because Verizon was stuck on CDMA, they wouldn't be able to counter-advertise it. But I kind of made it like, ha ha ha, they'd never be allowed to do that. Apple would never let them do that. Lo and behold, AT&T did that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now Verizon, the thing that was amazing is that Verizon did LTE first in the US, and they've done it the best so far. They've got an incredibly wide footprint for it, but the iPhone was stuck on CDMA. So the biggest, fastest, best, highest distributed LTE network in the US had the crappiest iPhone in the US. But it seems to me that the LTE iPhone fixes all that, and Verizon, they had the iPhone they needed, but not the iPhone they wanted, and now maybe they'll get both.
Yeah. I think this fall is going to be very interesting because up until now, it's, Verizon really hasn't had a lot to brag about other than we have the iPhone. And I think that when that phone comes out and it's LTE capable, as we're all kind of expecting and hoping, I think it's going to really, I don't even think I would say level the playing field, because I think there are so many people on Verizon that are going to enjoy, the network bump. I think I can't be the only person, especially in the last week or two, who is either seriously considering or has already decided to terminate my contract with AT&T when the time is right.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be a really interesting fall, and I, I'm not going to say that there's going to be a mass exodus that brings AT&T to its knees the way that I would hope, but yeah, I mean it's going to be huge for Verizon because I think their network is very robust and very reliable right now, and I think that they're in a great position to actually roll this phone out, have it work, have it be good, and have the expectations be met.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because you could tell, the rumor was that Verizon was going to be the first partner for the iPhone, but they took a pass and Apple went with AT&T instead. And you could see that Verizon did not want to make a deal with Apple. I mean, maybe that's too harsh, but it seemed like it. They went with every other phone they could. They had that little BlackBerry Storm fiasco, and then they went with various Android devices, the Droid campaign, and then they had the Samsung Fascinate, and they did everything they could to provide a phone that wasn't the iPhone but would appeal to iPhone buyers, and it never worked. They never got the customer attraction or retention or the average revenue per customer that AT&T was getting with the iPhone. So they eventually made the deal, got the iPhone, and then had the worst iPhone. They could hold a call. Lucky for them, AT&T couldn't hold a call or a connection. Because it was the only thing that offset the technological disadvantage of CDMA. But I'm really eager to see what Verizon can do with with a good iPhone on LTE.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see, because one of the biggest reasons why I've decided to switch is that I've been with AT&T now for I think 6 years, and since I had my Verizon iPad, which is using Verizon LTE, I've had a chance to play with it. I had AT&T iPads prior to that. I just figured I'd try it. I'd try Verizon, see how it was, change things up. I figured, well, I've got, tethering covered, wherever I've got service. And what I've found is that the service is so much more reliable. Verizon's LTE service on that iPad is so much more reliable, both in terms of coverage in my immediate area that I'm using it in, and just the general reliability that even with, a trickle of a signal, the thing is still extremely usable. That, between the kind of aggravation I've had with my phone and, my wife's phone and that experience with the iPad being so good, I thought, maybe it's time for a change. And I've gone back and forth about AT&T, where sometimes it's been really great, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'm through that rough patch. Maybe things are better now, but I think I just need a change, and I'm really looking forward to seeing, if this is going to be the right change. I don't expect it to be perfect.
You're the person who randomly gets an AT&T signal. It's like it's not that it never works. It's not that it works at known intervals. It randomly works. So you're always waiting because it just might work again, Seth.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think if you're a student of psychology, you can go and find any number of clinical trials in which it's demonstrated that, if you give a rat a treat every time, the rat becomes complacent and lazy. And if you keep the rat guessing, then the rat is always kind of like hungry and looking and doing stuff. But I'm kind of not hungry anymore. I just want the freaking phone to work, you know?
Are you suggesting that AT&T is actually an elaborate government conspiracy to try the patience and perseverance of the American public?
You made that mental leap, but I'm not.
You are not confirming nor denying.
Correct.
What did you know and when did you know it, Seth?
Yeah, no comment there.
I might be able to push you over the edge here on this AT&T thing because, as you well know, when the iPhone was introduced, it did not have MMS, but Apple supplied MMS rather early on in the product life everywhere in the world except on AT&T. AT&T took a pass. They said, no, thank you. Our network could not handle MMS from the iPhone. Every other phone in creation, yes, but not the iPhone. When tethering became available, even though a lot of places in the world get it for free, AT&T decided to charge you for it. Finally, they relented and gave you extra data when you paid for it. But, still, it was not the customer-friendly way to go. And now that we're finally going to get FaceTime over 3G, while other carriers have come out and said that they will just provide it, AT&T at first was cagey, and now it turns out they will only provide it if you pay for one of the more premium sharing plans on their network. Because, Seth, and this is not anti-competitive, this is nothing the FCC should worry about, but because apps that you download on your phone, like Skype, are different than apps that come built into your phone, like FaceTime.
Yeah, I heard that today. I don't think I agree with or understand that logic in any capacity.
There's no logic. There's no logic. No.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
But why? I don't understand why Apple gave them a stupid little lie of a 4G label. Okay, a faux 4G, a BS 4G label, and AT&T is still screwing around. I don't know why Apple maybe Apple has no choice. Maybe Apple has to let them get away with it. But why is AT&T doing this? Now there's competition. There'll be an LTE Verizon iPhone. What in the world is AT&T thinking?
I think what they're thinking is that they'll be able to deal with whatever, attrition they get in terms of people leaving, because probably by and large, the majority of the people that will complain won't leave. I had a half dozen reasons why I was ready to leave, and then I heard this and was like, well, okay, great. That's, thank you for that. That's not making my decision any more difficult. But I think if you just look at numbers, whenever there's a kerfuffle around a carrier and something happens and everybody cries bloody murder, there's probably a very small, very, very small fraction of people who actually follow through and pay the ETF, and they're like, that's it, I've had enough, and they jump ship. And I think AT&T knows that, and they're like, listen, you can get all up in arms about it now. Phone's going to come out, everybody's going to be excited, they're going to say, okay, whatever, just put me on the new plan, I want to do this thing, and that's going to be the end of it.
Georgia, what do you have next for us? Is it iPad mini time?
Let's do the iPad mini because I'm so excited. I'm really, really excited.
So John, our awesome conceptual graphic design renderer, modeler, made up these nice, we'll have a few more we'll put up over the week, but he made this nice design for us. And we went through quite a lot of the rumors, Georgia.
Yeah, you did. We've, not only you've broken most of the rumors on this baby, but yeah, you did a great job conceptualizing how it would, what the dock would do. Really nice. I love the, what will it look like? Oh, I can't wait to get it.
So let's quickly go over it. You can give me your 2 cents worth. So first up, what it will look like. We're all used to the bezel now. We've talked about it last week. I've been using the Nexus 7 again. I still don't like the Nexus 7. I wish it was running iOS. I'm going to have a device that's the same size running iOS soon, but I think the small bezel is fine. I am not at all bothered by the small bezel.
I don't think anyone else is going to be bothered by it either. It's smaller in size, so it's not as necessary to actually have your hands wrapped around it. And I don't think that most people do a lot of wrapping with the iPad. I can hold the iPad just fine. Like, I actually usually just hold it like this anyways. I'm not like...
You don't have Chad Garrett
fingers
hands.
all over the iPad. So, this is pretty much all I use is with the palm here. I don't know. Like the palms of my thumb, just kind of like holding it on the edge. And usually it's on my lap. I'm not holding it at all. I'm lazy. I want to do the least amount of effort as possible. I am, like that growing.
Yeah, and I think it's like it's in between, Seth. You know, like the iPod Touch has almost no bezel. The iPad has a huge one. This is just in between.
Yeah, it is. It looks more iPhone-ish to me just because of the proportions in that mock-up. That
Right.
it's a little, a little thicker in the bezel on the top and bottom. But I'm coming around on it. I mean, it's my first look at it was like, ooh, that seems strange to me. But I mean, the more I look at it, the more I think about it, the more I picture it in my hand. I'm like, yeah, I mean, that makes sense. It's probably about what we'd see.
And in the chat room, I forget, it went by fast. Kenny Plenty was asking, why would you get this? And that was the other question that we answered. And I'll put up the infamous Amazon bikini chick that they were using to make fun of Apple, showing that an iPad is not. I mean, if you're a hot bikini chick, you cannot use an iPad at the beach. And that's kind of facetious, but this is the core thing that Apple is addressing now, that there are some people who, no matter how much they wanted an iPad, it was just a little bit too big, a little bit too heavy, and a little bit too expensive. And going down to as thin as an iPod Touch, much, much lighter, probably the same weight, if not lighter than the Amazon Kindle Fire, and $200 to $250, that gets rid of a lot of objections right there.
Well, one of the things that most people use, like the only thing that I would not use my iPad for is when I'm going to sleep. I don't want to carry it. It is actually too heavy for that. And I do most of my reading right before I go to bed. So in that way, I think that the iPad mini will be a huge boon, and then I'll be able to, take it, read it, not have to worry that much about being exhausted. I'm already tired by the time I'm going to bed. So I usually just read from my phone, even though it's not as comfortable surfing the net on my phone as it is on my iPad.
You're a genius. So the iPhone is the walk around mobile get things done device, maybe the iPod Touch too. The iPad is a sit down on your lap, aggregate, enjoy kind of work device. The iPad mini is the lie down, lounge sort of, you need to be a little bit more mobile, but you don't want to be that small. And you need to get a little bit more done, but you can't afford to be that big. It is the ideal middle ground.
Right. And it'll be a nice size also to type from. In between that, for something that you want to have mobile, it's not that expensive. If it gets, if Kenny the Clown comes by and steals it, I'm not going to be as upset of losing my mini as I would for my regular iPad.
Leave the iPad and just keep walking. No,
right.
So Seth, is this enough to get you into a bikini on the lounge chair?
Seth's already in a bikini.
Yeah, I'm wearing the bottoms. You just can't tell. I'll probably get one. We'll probably have to get one for the office just to test against. I love that
excuse. It's like I have to get one to review.
Well, you know where I'm coming from. But I could see myself definitely buying one of these for my wife or maybe for my mom, who's kind of resisted getting into this stuff but has played with all of ours and been like, this is great, I love these, but never really expressed enough desire to kind of follow through with it. So I think I can definitely see myself getting one, maybe buying some as gifts, and I think it's going to be a huge gift for people just because of that, perceived price point.
And we talked about before, Georgia, what about education? I mean, the ability for a company or a school to massively deploy these is phenomenal.
It's a great thing. I wanted to ask you, Rene, something that's a little bit, you talked about the mock-up of the design. So, Rene, are they going to have everything glued in so that these are also going to be absolutely impossible to fix? Is iFixit going to have to make specialized tools, cranks, and everything else in order to change the internals of the iPad mini?
Yeah, I mean, we're past the time when Apple did that with the Macintosh. It's nothing new. They would rather make certain design concessions. They're going to make this thing as thin as an iPod Touch. They are going to literally put it in a little compactor and squish it down, and there will be not an ounce of oxygen left in that casing. So it's not like a Meccano or a Lego set. It's not meant for us to go and hack around with. It's an appliance. It's not a tool. It's not a device.
Right. You also talked about how the Apple could handle the 7-inch display. I love that. It looks good.
Put that up for a second. Yeah, it's not a big surprise. I mean, Palm did this with the Touchpad Go that they never released. They just took the touchpad interface and shrank it down to 7 inches. And Apple's going to be bigger than 7 inches. They're going to be 7.85 inches, which is much closer to 8 inches. It's much closer in size to an iPad than anything else. And when you run the math, and we've talked about this before, it ends up that the the actual buttons will be about the size of an iPhone. And we had a whole segment on Iterate about this, where Mark Edwards broke out the Fitts law. And the idea is that the further away from your finger a button is, the bigger it has to be, because it has to compensate for accuracy. So if you're holding an iPod Touch, your thumb is just moving around. You're not actually moving your hand. So you can have very small buttons. On a big iPad, you actually have to hold it with one hand, move the other hand. So the buttons are a bit bigger. This brings them down to iPhone size. So they won't be as great as either the iPhone or the iPad, but they'll be a good mix in between. Did I say that properly, Seth? I'm never sure.
I think that was adequately described.
I may live.
For now.
And the other... Go ahead, Georgia.
Yeah, I want the other question. What is it going to be called?
I mean, Gruber started talking about an iPad Air. Before that, as far as I've heard, I mean, people have just called it the 7-inch iPad or the iPad Mini. That's not an official name. That's just, you have to call it something when you talk about it, sort of a name. But Apple can decide literally up until the time they start printing boxes what they want to call it.
Are they going to go for something crazy, though, and that will make everyone, just like when they first named the iPad something horrific, like the iPadini or something
the small iPad.
It's going to be something short. It's not going to be a long, horrendous name. We can pretty much assume that. Seth, your thoughts?
I don't honestly know. I think they went with iPod Mini. I think we could definitely probably see iPad Mini again. I mean, the iPod Mini was one of their, if not their greatest selling device at that time.
Until the Nano, yep.
Right. So yeah. I think they've had a lot of success with that little
the
suffix.
Mac Mini?
Yeah, exactly. I'm going with Mini.
Georgia, you gonna make a bet?
I like the iPad Mini. I think that if they, again, I wouldn't want them to use the word Nano because it's going to cause some sort of confusion. I think the same thing with an Air, because most people just call it their Air. They don't really say Mac Air. But I like the iPad Mini, or, iPad 0.5. I don't know. Something really tiny.
Now, there's several, I mean, if we do what George's favorite form of behavioral analysis, past behavior for future behavior, Apple's got several things that they have done. They have, for example, done iOS device size branding. They could come up with a whole new name. It's not an iPod, it's not an iPad, it's an iPad. I don't think they will do this, but you never know. They could go with MacBook Air style branding. So it could just be the iPad, and one has little brackets 7, and one has a little bracket, 10 or whatever, 8 and 10, whatever they want to put in the brackets there. They could go with MacBook style branding, where MacBook you have Air and Pro, so you could just have the iPad Air and the iPad Pro, or just the iPad Air and the iPad. They could go with, I don't think they'd go with Google style branding or Samsung style branding, where they have the actual inches of the name there, but they could, bracket something else in there. There's lots of options still. iPid?
I could see them either doing a Mini, or I could see them just saying, this is iPad. It's also iPad. Now we have 2.
Making a small iPad is madness. It's not madness. This is iPad! And then just kick the competition off the cliff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm going to go with either the iPad Air. I mean, the iPad branding is strong. The Air branding is not as strong. I get the what's the right when in branding when you make a name that you want to inspire people, like Vista. I forget what it's called, but I can get that sort of vibe from it. But I don't know if Apple wants to actually have a box saying iPad Air on it. So maybe they'll just go with iPad, and it'll just be a smaller version.
iPad 7.
No, they can't do that because we had an iPad 2, and people will think, oh, the 2-inch iPad.
Yeah.
Complicated.
Yeah, it is a little bit complex. I like Mini. I think that it's cute.
Mini iPad. I think so too. What else have you got for us, George?
Oops, sorry. I'm traversing different things. Oh, goodness. Well, there is more. If we couldn't have enough litigation already, Google has decided to sue Apple over pretty much everything. They want to shut down Apple, so they sued Apple over Siri and everything else.
Well, I mean, the big story here is, though,
worked against Apple for Samsung, so, hey.
No, I mean, the big story here for me, and I'm going to sound like a broken record here, is Google's continuing ability. I mean, they are masters at manipulating their fan base. They'll say, "Oh, we're open and Apple is closed," and everyone will rush to the message board and say, "Apple's evil and closed," and then Google will say, "Oh, but we're not open sourcing Honeycomb, sorry." And this time they're like, "We don't believe in litigation. You should innovate, not litigate." And then as soon as they actually have patents, I mean, that was great when they didn't have patents. As soon as they get patents, they litigate just like any other big company. So like with this, I think this is fine. This is what the patent system is there for, what the legal system is there for. I think it's a waste of time, but they're legally allowed to do it. But what bugs me is that they set up their users to be like these online soldiers for them and then just act like complete hypocrites over and over again. Drives me crazy.
I'm going to go at this. I know I'm going to send a whole bunch of hate mail. How is that different, though, than Apple's fan base? We are also exceptionally polarized. Like pro-Apple. Apple is good. Apple tries to do
but
things.
Apple never says they're open. Apple never says they're anti-litigation. Apple's like, we're elite. Like, Apple acts like, I don't want to say bad words again, but Apple acts like
they're the happy, caring, make you feel good company when they're no better than anyone else. They'll shut anyone else down.
But they say that on the conference call. Tim Cook will say, "I'm going to sue these people." He doesn't say suing is bad and then go and sue people.
The Apple said a whole bunch of stuff and then go against it just as well as
like.
Oh, Apple will say,
You're
what?
holding it wrong.
A 7-inch iPad would be a horrible thing to have. And then they'll come out and go with a 7-inch iPad.
No, I mean, that's fair, but that's not anti in other companies. They're not setting people up to, well, I guess they set people up to attack small pads. Fine.
Well, they're deciding to shut down Samsung. They went at them all tooth and nail as well.
But they said that. They said they were going to go thermonuclear, and then they went thermonuclear. That's consistent behavior.
Has Google ever said that we're never going to sue anyone over patents?
They have. They've said that they don't believe in patents, that you should innovate, not litigate. They said all sorts of anti-patent things when they had no patents.
No, I cannot say, like, I don't really feel that way. I don't feel that Apple is any above this and or below. Yeah, Apple can say things and lie about it or say, what, we really care about our workers in, every single country and we care about them and we're going to go in and make sure that we make changes, and they don't. So, really, is it any difference? No, not really.
I'm going to argue with you.
Apple's doing it, so let Google do it. I'm like, good, go for them.
No, I said that though. I said I think it's fine that Google does it, but I don't think it's fine that Google keeps saying we're open and Apple is closed. We believe in innovation. Apple believes in litigation. When they engage in the same behavior, Apple never says we do this and Google does that when they in fact do that too.
Yeah, they both lie. I'm not saying that they're not. I don't think that the thought that you would try to hold a company up to every single thing.
Isn't their motto "Don't be evil"? Apple never had a motto saying "Don't be evil."
Apple's had all kinds of mottos, but again, I think that everyone
they got rid of the rainbow.
They are just there to sell. They say all kinds of stuff about trying to, we care about our people. We have to stick down all of the pieces that I've had because of space. Whereas, the Nexus did the exact same thing, the same spot, but it's one of the most fixable tablets that there are.
Yeah, but it's way
Apple
bigger
lies
than an
just
iPad.
as well.
My only comment went into the chat room a second ago. It was a screen capture from War Games where the computer decides that the only winning move is not to play.
No, see, this is the thing.
I'm just listening to the two of you. I don't even want to get involved. I'm exhausted just thinking about this topic. So you wrap it up, you say what you're going to say, and then let's go.
We get comments from people all the time who are highly invested in the Google ecosystem. Hell, I'm a huge Google user. I use Gmail. I use all these things. I think it's fine. I just don't buy their "don't be evil," innovate, don't litigate thing. I think that's just a bunch of marketing speak. But there's people who really believe that. There's people who really take them at their word, who believe that Google has a higher purpose, is much more altruistic, and really believes that "don't be evil" thing. And I think, and I've said it before, any company sufficiently large is indistinguishable from evil. And I think that it is,
Is Apple evil then, Rene?
Yes, absolutely. I believe it, but and Apple kind of acts like jerks. So you kind of, like, when they're jerks, it's not a hard thing for me to believe because you're holding it wrong. I mean, of course Apple would say that. They think you're holding it wrong. They're not acting like, anyway, to get back to to kind of put a button on this, it leaves a poor taste in my mouth when average users are manipulated into being corporate soldiers based on false premises. And yes, there are Apple fanboys.
Isn't Apple the best at that?
No, they're manipulating you into buying their products. They could really care less what you think one way or another about Google.
No, I will honestly agree with Rene here in that for years while Android was getting built up, all we heard was how open it was and how open was so much better and how Apple was so bad because it was closed. And that's a philosophical difference that, first of all, is mostly inaccurate and also has no bearing on the end user and their experience with the phone unless you are the kind of person that is going to get down there and start grinding gears on your device. 99% of the phone buying population, that has no meaning for them at all. However, it became this weird battle cry that just got adopted, and it just became this holy war that doesn't even make sense anymore.
Motivating these guys. There are people who philosophically will buy, because they think it's fair trade coffee, or they believe that you have aligned with their philosophy and that makes them more likely to buy from you, believe in you, and work for you. And when that is over and over again proven to be false, I think it is a detriment to their user base.
Okay, I'm going to say it. I think that probably I'm one of the only, maybe I am, maybe I'm not. I'm sure I'm not the only person that didn't believe either company's spiel. I figure it's a spiel that they want to sell. And yes, when a company is small and growing up against the big bad, as Microsoft as once was, and Apple was like, we're open, we're caring, we love you, we're going to do it to the schools and we're going to be fabulous. And then Apple becomes big and they're the big bad. And now Google started up and they were like, we're going to do everything for free and we're going to give all of our free stuff. And now they're a huge company and they're protecting their own market just like they will. Why? Because they can and will try to squeeze everything out of any company until another company comes up, goes up, starts out grassroots, and everyone loves them because they're so caring. They'll say all kinds of fabulous things, and then they'll become big, and it's going to happen exactly the same. So, it
Twitter.
does not.
Yeah, exactly. But why isn't Google called on it? I mean, like, Twitter.
Everyone's called on it. They're all called
Google
on it.
hasn't so far. It's happened over and over again, and Google still enjoys a massive support base of people
So
who
does
will.
Apple. Apple still has a massive support
Yeah, but they're
base.
not.
At one point, Apple was the happy-go-lucky rainbow company. They're not anymore.
But Apple is Mike Tyson after Buster Douglas.
Fine.
Google
But
still
that's fine.
enjoys that level of support, like that level of unreasoning
I don't
support.
think that people look to Google anymore as what they used to. Google's now, again, in all of our business with Google Plus and everything else and dealing with different privacy issues and what they're allowed and not allowed to do. They're going the same way as many other companies when they're trying to squeeze the people. And so
here's the
there
thing
will
for
be a
me.
backlash with everything else.
Apple thinks I have bad taste, which I disagree with, but that's what they think. Google thinks I'm stupid. They think they can say these things that I know, they know that I know that it's a lie, and they will still lie about it, which makes me think they think I'm stupid. And that is what drives, that is the core of my disturbance with them, is that they will look at me, look into my eyes. Eric Schmidt will fix me with that cold, calculating, Java-riddled stare, look at me and act like I'm stupid.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. It's very, very frustrating.
Yes. I'm frustrated, Georgia.
It's fair. I just think that you should hold the same sword to both companies.
I do.
That's all.
It's just
I only thought of it.
I've lost my Apple innocence years ago. My Apple innocence, they killed that out of me, but I still had my Google innocence. I still had this belief that a bunch of what are Vibram wearing hippie upstarts could keep going in a sound philosophical direction. And then bastards.
I don't believe that for a moment.
Bastards. All right, so here's the question, and you asked this, so I'll let you do it again. But we were talking about this. There was this great Marvel comic series called What If. It was like, what if Captain America was revived in the 80s? What if what if Gwen Stacy had been bitten by the radioactive spider? All these different what if scenarios. What if Wolverine killed the Hulk? So, what did you ask?
We asked if Google never made Androids, how would iOS 6 be different today, and who would be Apple's biggest competitor? I'm going to say it. I'm like, I still love my Palm. Would Palm be able to have survived? No, but anyways.
Well, no, maybe, because WebOS, they were stuck on Sprint for a while, but they were supposed to get a monster push on Verizon, and that push went to the Android Droid instead. And if there had not been Android, maybe WebOS would have gotten that big Verizon push.
Yep. Yeah. Android completely took the air out of that balloon for them. I'm fairly confident that WebOS would have been your second place contender because, like you said, Verizon got that push for Android and they completely forgot about the Pre. It was just off their radar. And as soon as that happened, it was dead in the water on Sprint. Verizon didn't care. And people were like, why would I bother? There's one of these. I can pick between these other 3 or 4 phones and have exactly what I want. And they pushed so hard for that. I mean, you could say it would have been Windows Phone, but Microsoft was still way too late with that.
Now, they did have bad hardware. They were perhaps mismanaged.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, Lloyd is saying in the chat room, the Pre took the air out of WebOS, and that's very true. The hardware was terrible, but it really also didn't get a chance to go anywhere else, you know? Yeah. Like, there was no chance to have other hardware because the market was completely choked out.
Now, if, George, on the flip side, if Apple and Google, let's say, like, they went to, let's just pretend for a minute, Eric Schmidt went to Steve Jobs and said, Steve, we're really afraid that one day, maybe you, maybe Microsoft, maybe this monstrous WebOS company that's been allowed to flourish on Verizon is going to lock us out of the phones. They're going to go to Bing search. You're going to make your own apps. And we feel like we've got to make our own platform. We've got to have one place where our services will always be safe. We've got to have a homeland. And Steve just looked at him in those beady Java eyes and said, I promise you that'll never happen. And Schmidt believed him. And they decided instead of making Android to make like the best Maps app ever for the iPhone, to make search, like, to make everything that Google makes for Android and make it for the iPhone. So you'd have iOS 6 with the Google power. Instead of Siri, you'd have Google powered Google Now or something. You'd have the best features of both in one platform. That would be, I don't want to use, religious terms now, but that'd be an amazing phone.
It would, but the only problem with this scenario is that without the competition being so strong, there wouldn't be a Siri. There wouldn't need to be. So then there wouldn't be its retrospect in the opposite contender. It just wouldn't have happened. It wouldn't have been such a necessity. So that's the one problem with a huge competition. The more competition, the better things do. Same thing with species. The more competition, a stronger species becomes.
Well, maybe Windows Phone with built-in Yahoo would be the competition.
Let me.
That's a scary thought.
Let me ask this question though. We know that Apple doesn't like being reliant on other people for much, and we've seen them partner with Twitter and now Facebook for integration into the OS. I kind of feel like they would not have given Google the keys to the kingdom and had all that data be tethered to them. I feel like they still would have spread their interests around because, for the same reason that they never wanted to be tied to anybody else. I don't think they would want all their eggs in one basket. I feel like they would have maybe had
They would have screwed Google if Google hadn't screwed them first?
I don't know that they would have screwed them. I just think they would not have. I don't think Google would have been quite the presence on the iPhone that it was. I definitely think that the apps would have been better. I think Maps would have been better, obviously, for example, but I don't know that they would have dominated, the data influx on the phone because I don't think Apple would have allowed that much control. Because if Google one day got up after that point and said, you know what, Apple, we don't like the terms of this deal anymore, that would have been, devastating.
We're going to Palm. We're going exclusive on WebOS.
Right. I think they would have hedged their bets in that regard.
So Google hedged their bets with Android, and maybe if they hadn't done that, Apple would have hedged their bets, and the same thing would have happened. Inevitability, Seth.
It's the smell.
Mr. Anderson.
Yeah.
More like a virus. Georgia, do you have the same thing? Do you think there's inevitability to all this? Is this the way it had to be?
I don't think that this is the way that it had to be. It's the way that it happened, and in the end, I think that the stronger the competition. I'm always sad to see a company die out through the competition because I still hold out hope that something even more amazing is going to evolve through that. So every time some company comes out and says, you know what, we're going to make a Bluetooth watch, I'm like, ooh, I'm all excited. This really could happen. Or, Nuance. And I'm like, oh, awesome. We're really going to be able to interact with and I'm like, okay. At least they tried.
That was a BlackBerry 10 pitch, wasn't it? You're rooting for Rem.
Yeah, I just want Kevin to be able to cut his hair.
Nice. We have some questions. Do we have time for questions? We have time for a couple questions, maybe?
We can do a couple.
All right, emails. We will each take a turn asking one. This is Francisco's question. If the September 12th date for Apple's unveiling is true, how late can Apple send out invitations to the press for the event? We're about 3 weeks away from the date and no confirmation from Apple. What do you guys think about that? The day before, Apple could theoretically send out press invitations. Usually they do like just under a week or around a week, but this is Apple. They do not believe in giving notice for anything ever.
And they don't have to.
No, because they know that you will jump on that red eye.
Right.
I still think out of just, yeah, they could do pretty much whatever they want and people will go because it's, one of the biggest news events of the year. But I still think there's a level of decorum that Apple probably would stick to. And yeah, 6 days or whatever they do now is not a lot, but I think they're probably going to give people at least that much.
They're not going to make it a lot of time for other companies to get all prepared. So they're not going to do it, say, now or tomorrow. And they also want to make sure that people do show up because if you're flying down, you can't book even a flight the day before and have a hotel. So,
right.
2 weeks would be probably also too much time, somewhere within 10 days, I would assume.
Although since those bastard websites leaked the dates, Nokia and
it's not. Yeah,
and Samsung have announced September 5th events now.
Yeah, it'll be a do not enter sign for us, but
So don't read anything into Apple not announcing it until it's about a week. Until like the first week of September.
Right. John says there are a lot of discount stores around the world. Should Apple open up their own discount store?
Apple outlets.
$1
off an iPad.
Never happened.
The closest you'll get is the refurb section of apple.com.
Yep.
Right. Or their once a year 10% off sale.
Black Friday. 10%?
Right.
Wow.
5%? What is it? 3% off? How much do they
They'll
give?
give you the bag for free if you show. No, yeah, it depends. It varies on
not
the
even
product.
tax, eh?
Yeah, no, but it depends on your jurisdiction. It's not even Canadian tax for sure.
Well, no, that's a lot.
It's probably Nevada tax,
would be a lot.
which I think
It's
is
not going
zero.
to be 50% for sure. So do you ever see them doing it? I say it would never, ever happen.
Well, I don't know what this new crazy Wile E. Coyote boss they have for Apple retail. Who knows? But the Apple that I know, I don't think would ever do this.
And again, they don't have to. It somewhat brings them down in prestige.
The last question is perfect for Seth.
I don't have the question, do I?
Yeah, it's in your show notes.
Oh, I'm sorry. It is at the bottom. All right. Michael wants to know. Excuse me there.
The best episode of the show ever.
All right. Michael wants to know. I love the iMore iPhone app, but have you considered adding push notifications to the app to support breaking news updates? Well, yes. We've considered adding push notifications to the app.
We have considered
Rene?
it.
We've also not considered it. But yes,
it's fair to say it's
How can you
non-trivial.
not consider it after you've considered it?
But we didn't consider it first. No, that's not true. We considered it all along.
So it's one of those jokes, right? Have you ever considered mating with a baboon? And if you say no, then it means you did in fact consider it because you came up with the answer no.
Right.
But it's non-trivial. So I mean, like you have to run a server for it, and you have to make sure that it's reliable and that it works because people start to depend on it. So we have considered doing it, but we would not do it lightly. We would do it, I believe, properly, Seth.
Yeah, I mean, push notifications are one of those things where Apple makes it look like just this magic, expecto notification, and then you get a thing on your phone, and it's just so
SEO news alert.
Right, but I mean, it's fairly complicated, even when you're doing it as simply as you can through them. So it's not to be taken lightly. If you want it to be done correctly and not just bother people.
And would it be for every single one of our stories or just special stories? And how would we put a link to that to do it? I would actually want to mess with it and put up a story just so a whole bunch of people would get a push notification for something completely ridiculous like Rene got a new haircut.
Nice.
Anyway.
You're the reason now Seth will never ever give us push notifications.
Yeah. Yeah. Seth in a bikini, it would be just something ridiculous.
I want a notification when Rene is wearing a Hawaiian shirt and taking stupid pictures.
Done. All right.
Tomorrow.
Website questions. And this is a good one for Seth too. The difficulties in apps adapting to the new screen resolution. I'm assuming they mean the iPhone because it'll have extra pixels. Things are not resolution dependent. They have to be rewritten to become universal. Is there any way for Apple to ease this transition? Will they letterbox? Will they cut off? What do you think, Seth?
It's a good question. I'm not entirely sure what they're going to do. My guess would be there's probably going to be some display buffering. Like they're not going to stretch anything. They're going to show it in whatever native resolution it was, originally built in, and they'll figure out a way to make the display accommodate it that is as elegant and the term graceful degradation comes to mind. And that's something that, you use when you're trying to build towards really current standards and really current browsers, but you have to make sure that it works in other browsers and older browsers. It gracefully degrades. So the experience is as good as it can possibly be without it being optimized for that. And I think that it'll probably just be, blocked out on either side. I don't think it's going to be stretched. I don't think there's going to be any kind of, weird magic that happens.
You think that UI list view and UI collect view will just propagate to fill the display and everything else will get pillar boxed?
Oh yeah. I think there's a lot of the OS that is already ready to just extend a little bit. And I think that definitely like tables and things like that are going to accommodate that space easily. A lot of list-based apps, a lot of things like that, not going to have a problem. Things like games, things that are fixed, the artwork and stuff has to be...
Yeah, OpenGL will just fill the buffer. Sorry, not fill the buffer. OpenGL will just fill the... You can move OpenGL around quite a bit.
Yeah.
All right. I think we have two more questions. I'll get through them quickly. And that was Falupa who asked that one. Blue Dreamin' wants to know, will Apple let you pre-order the next-gen iPhone as a retail purchase? He couldn't get this answer anywhere. That's because Apple has not announced it yet, so it's impossible to get an answer for which has not been provided. But as soon as Apple does give information on that, and I'm guessing that'll be after they announce the actual product, we will let you know. And the last one is, it's me, David, and he would like to know if the iPad mini will have a Retina display or if the Retina version will ever be available. And as far as I have heard, Apple could do a Retina display, but it would be prohibitively expensive at the cheap price they want to hit with this iPad. So my guess is you won't get it this time, but you will get it in a future version. Anyone think that's crazy?
No, makes some sense.
Yeah, I think that in the end, if they can sell enough and they start making it, and then it, once they start mass producing, it's not going to be a big issue. It's the biggest part of that is trying to sell it within the price point of $200 when they're already having to also pay for the overhead of designing and making sure that a 7-inch iPad is functional. Like we just think about, usually when we talk about being able to afford something, we only deal with the mass production of the actual item, but there's also a lot of people that they had to pay, and I know they have tons of bank, but pay in order to design it, make sure that it was functional, test it. So there's a lot of overhead dealing with a new design, and that's why Apple waits 2 years in between changing the design of something that they think will be profitable. And it's probably also the reason why the Touch has kind of been left on the sidelines.
Sorry, the chat room keeps asking when you're going to do a Reddit AMA, George. Is there a reason for that?
Besides the fact that no one would care, but thank you. They'd all be like, who is she and
Ask
why?
me anything. Crickets, chirp, chirp. No, That's not true.
The first question would be, why are you doing this AMA? No one cares.
I honestly believe it would take down Reddit servers.
Yes, but not for the reason that you're thinking.
All right. Georgia, if we wanted to find out more about you, even if we're not asking you everything, if we just want to ask you something, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at GeorgiaTIPB and also on the website, www.imore.com, and of course on Zen and Tech, which will be coming up right after this.
Seth Clifford, Esquire, how about you?
I am Seth Clifford on Twitter and now finally app.net. You can find me here and on Iterate with Mark and Rene. And if you want to see the work that we do, please visit our site, nickelfish.com.
Damn it.
I'm done with damn it. I'm done.
You're done. You can find me at Rene Ritchie on Twitter.
You're only done when we decide you're done. Sorry.
Georgia wasn't done. Go ahead. And I'm starting over. I hate this episode. You can find me at Rene Ritchie on Twitter, at Rene Ritchie on app.net, Rene Ritchie on Google Plus, and a litany of other networks of your choosing. You can find me on iMore.com. You can find all of us at iMore. You can email us at podcast@imore.com, or you can check out all of our shows at mobilenations.com/shows. We're here every Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. If you have not watched us live, please do. If you think this show was crazy, the stuff that I'm going to edit it out would make your hair flip around backwards like a Shatner toupee. So make sure you do join us. I would like to thank the iMore Accessory Store for sponsoring this episode. And I want to thank everyone in our chat room, the best looking chat room on the interwebs. You guys make this show so much fun. Especially because you tease the hell out of Georgia.
Like, could you even like try to fake that one like you meant to?
You don't think I think the chat room is good looking?
I think you think the chat room is amazing. I don't know if you might be stressing perhaps slightly, about everything else, but yeah.
I don't understand. The show's never going to end for me. I'm going to wake up in the middle of the night going, show's wrong!
If you wake up tomorrow and Sonny and Cher are playing on your clock radio, you know you're in trouble.
I keep turning around and a black cat walks across Georgia's screen, the same black cat twice. Is that a bad sign?
Yeah, you're gonna.
No,
you're
that's
gonna wanna,
all good. Things are gonna go well
unplug.
for you. Okay, I need someone to help me pick what color T-shirt I'm gonna buy. Pink.
Are
blue?
you shopping? Who do you think you are, Phil Nickinson? All right, Seth. Thank you very much for joining us, sir.
Oh, thank you as always.
We might spin up and iterate on Monday.
Yeah, we should get our FTL drives ready.
All right, and jump.